Good morning. I'm Ken Biberaj, and welcome to Coffee with Ken, a thought leadership series at the nexus of business, politics, and values today, for sure. Earlier this week, we had an interesting discussion on the innovations of our emergency management systems across the United States. But today, we're joined by Jackie Edmundson, CEO of Stealth Venture Labs, and Chris Huss, managing partner at Axxum Consulting. Great to see you guys.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning,
And
Ken.
we kind of collaborated on this, right? Like Jackie and I have known each other for years, and we were always enthusiastic about trying to find a fun topic to kind of tap Jackie's intellect and experience on, and we kind of landed on this idea of values-based leadership, right? So let's dive in. Jackie, maybe give a little bit of a kind of background how we came up with this topic and what you're up to at Stealth Venture.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, look, values take us all the way back, Ken, right? When you and I went together to school at American University, right? So some good values there, but
I told you
really
we
what
weren't
I
going to
think,
talk about the college years and the
yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna, air any dirty laundry here. But I think when it comes down to it, when you ask me about myself, at heart, I'm an activator and a builder. So my experience really comes from purposeful leadership that really up levels people, processes, performance, productivity. And I've done that in a variety of different ways over the years, starting actually in the federal government, and then working my way into digital marketing and leadership. And so now I have the honor and privilege of serving as the CEO for Stealth Venture Labs. We're a digital marketing agency, full service. But I think one of the coolest things that we do is work with a lot of small businesses to help them grow. And that's at the heart of our values and the people that I get to work with on the day to day. So really fun stuff, using those values to grow and really ground as we continue to scale with others.
Nice. And I'm thankful to you, Jackie, for introducing us to Chris. And Chris,
Yeah.
I think your background is so fascinating, right? You're on this like private equity track and then kind of make a pivot. And then here you are kind of helping advise and think through it, right? Like, private equity, totally synonymous with values, right? Everybody knows that. So
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, no, really glad to be here this morning, Ken and Jackie. It's always good to catch up. So I'm Chris Huss. I'm a managing partner at Axxum Consulting. And where Jackie said she's an activator and a builder, I'm more of an improver, right? So I'd like to come into situations and leave it better than I found it, and that's been a common lifeline throughout, both my personal and professional life. Academically, I was always interested in process improvement and studied industrial engineering and worked in the manufacturing space, and then transitioned into more service industries. And at Axxum, we really focus on the people. So Axxum was originally founded as a human capital advisory firm. We've expanded our services into operations and strategy type matters, but really at its core, and I'll talk about core a little bit later, which is the heartstone of my values, is people first mentality and putting people before profits.
Interesting. Well, here, let's dive into that because I think it's helpful to kind of level set on like values. It's kind of like a big word, kind of gets tossed around, but like, what does it mean to you, Jackie, and how do you think about it kind of day to day now as a CEO for your company?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good question because values can mean a lot of different things to different people. But for me, it's really looking at what are kind of the five core things that guide me. And it's not just about professionally, it's also about personally. And I find that they're the same. They're the same between the two things. And what a blessing that is because that's really allows me to feel stable and comfortable in what I'm doing professionally or personally. So I'll share since Chris brought up his, but mine are loyalty, genuine relationships, accountability to myself and to others, success and winning, and fun. If we're not having fun in what we're doing, I mean, come on, like we're here how many hours a day, right? And so I really use that in my role to ground myself and my team because if we're aligned in our values, it makes it so much easier for us to overcome roadblocks, handle difficult situations when they come up. But it also allows us to collaborate and have fun at the same time and drive together towards that common goal. And I think that's just been really cool to be able to have something that you can sit down and even if we're all virtual, right? So we're not
Yeah.
sitting in an office together, know that we have that commonality and working together on that really helps us just build those relationships together and feel comfortable doing it.
And just as background, like you guys have known each other for years, but have actually never met in person, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know
Wow.
how tall Chris is. He could be 5'2" for all I know.
freakishly tall like that. Yeah. And so Chris, as a segue, kind of how do you think about it? What are your kind of core? You brought it up, but fill us in.
Yeah. Very similar to what Jackie said. And I kind of use the acronym CORE to frame it up. And CORE stands for commitment, opportunistic, respect, and empathy. And really, the commitment and the opportunistic part, as Jackie said, it really, translates into kind of everything I do, whether it's personal or professional, right? It's say-do ratio. You do what you say and you get it done. You overcome obstacles and challenges. And you look for new opportunities kind of around every turn. But really what's important is kind of that second half, which is respect and empathy, right? It's putting other people first. It's really considering others' thoughts and beliefs. And a mantra that I always take with me when I meet someone else is that the person that I'm talking to always knows more than I do. They always know more than they do, than I do coming into a new situation. And it's important to always kind of go in with that assumption that this person has incredible value to add. And I just hope to learn, from it and be able to add to it, as opposed to trying to impart my own, thoughts or ways of doing things.
Interesting.
And
Well,
I think,
yeah.
I was going to say, Chris, you made me think of the fact that, we also, when we meet new people or we're coming into a situation where with someone on our team, understanding and having empathy that there's other things in their world going on, right? And
Right.
understanding how they might be coming to the table that day, and you might not have that full visibility into what they're dealing with, and having that empathy, or for me, that genuine relationship, that you can kind of know when somebody might be struggling with something, or maybe they're celebrating something. And how
Yeah.
do you kind of pivot your leadership and your communication around that to meet that person where they are?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because I feel like it's easy, not easy, but we all kind of set our kind of values and goals, but like the stamina and the endurance to kind of maintain it during your own ups and your own downs and somebody else's, right? Like we're always kind of reacting to things happening to us as well as understanding what's happening to other people. How do you kind of stay steadfast and kind of like maintaining your values despite like emotion challenges? Chris, maybe we start with you and then Jackie.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I think part of it is being patient, right? I think a lot of times, we get in stressful situations and we all have deadlines and we all have multiple things going on and we try to go too fast and we try to go straight to the solution. When I go into a new situation, or really even if it's, encountering, the same individual, as Jackie said, people have ups and downs and you go into different situations. It's listen, think second, and third, act only if necessary, right? And I think people often put those in the wrong order, right?
Yeah.
And they come in and they're very reactionary, or they're very kind of, aggressive. It's taking, a brief second to really kind of understand where that person is at that day, and then understand what's going on. And that's, kind of the way that I approach things.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think,
Yeah.
Chris, when we think about different situations, right, and I get it, right? It can be hard to say, oh, I'm going to be true to my values. But I think if we look at it the opposite way and we think about, this is when I need my values the most.
Yeah.
This is when we need to stop, pause, like Chris said, and ground myself in those values. So a lot of times when I'm in a place of anxiety or fear or reaction, it's taking that and using it as an opportunity to say, okay, hold on, why do I feel that way? And then taking my values and kind of dissecting it based off of that. Where do I want to go based on my values? To Chris's point, is it, people for us is a really big thing over profitability. And I think you can really use your values to ground you and find that resilience, because they're the commonality regardless, right? They're going to get you through those ups and
Yeah.
downs.
It's funny because I was in preparation for this thinking about kind of how you maintain this at work versus at home. And sometimes at home, I run into the situation where I'm over caffeinated and hyper and quick. And my amazing wife once accused me of kind of needing to, stop a little bit. And I kind of, as a joke, said, so I need to stop, collaborate, and listen. And the wise words of Vanilla Ice. And she was just like, you're an idiot, but yes, you need to do those. And because she was like, you're always so quick to give your advice and your suggestions and your plan when that's not what she's actually looking for. That's more of a home personal situation, but it's this dynamic. Like I would never do that with a client. So it's the consistency of just like maintaining and being true to your values across like your day and your situations. It's a lot harder than people realize, I think.
I think it is, but I think with practice, it becomes a lot easier. And as you start to practice it, like anything else, like sports, right, with the
Yeah.
Olympics on, as you start to use that muscle, it almost becomes second nature for you.
Yeah. Interesting. So you mentioned kind of profit over purpose, etc., right? Like, can you be true to values while also being good in business without sacrificing and kind of missing out on your own success? Like, do you think strong values lead to more business success and profitability, or is it a kind of, choice you have to make?
I mean, I'll take a swing first, Chris, and you
Sure.
piggyback or cut me off. But I think that grounding in strong values allows you to have a better growth multiplier. If I go back to last year, right, we talked about 2023 economic headwinds. Obviously, everybody was facing that. South was facing that as well. But really, what we were able to do as a team and myself was take that step back and say, okay, what are our values as a group? How do
Mhm.
we service the clients in that way, right? And even if we're dealing with issues where clients are experiencing economic issues, how do we come to them using those values in order to drive growth and opportunity versus allowing that to hold us back? So I think that you can use it as a growth multiplier. And the other piece that I would say is it's so important for hiring. And
Yeah.
I don't just mean personnel, but clients as well, right?
Mm.
You're going to find more success if you hire the right people and you bring on the right partners. And looking for those and really vetting them from that values perspective. Are they aligned? If you are, you're just going to take off like a rocket ship instead of hitting your head against that wall.
Interesting. Yeah. Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really like a few things that you said, Jackie, and when you said growth multiplier, as you mentioned, Ken, at the intro, the majority of the work that I do and my team does with Axxum is for private equity owned
Mhm.
clients. And there's some stigmas or perceptions, right? That it's a profit first mentality
Yeah.
and it right. It's kind of the dollar driving all decisions as opposed to, some other things in business. I think what differentiates, kind of myself and Axum and the way that we approach things is it doesn't need to be explicit. It doesn't need to be out there for everyone to see, but we really do, kind of consider where the personnel and the company is coming from. We have a directive when we come in, and often we're hired by a fund, and the directive is to cut costs or to increase
Mm.
profitability, right? But the way that we get there is to really understand what is really causing the strife and the problems in these organizations. And often it is organizational, it's people related, it's lack of communication, it's lack of trust from the ownership to the actual employees or the business leaders. And
Mm.
by working through those issues with our clients, that's how we do get that growth multiplier, as Jackie said. That's how we ultimately do drive better success. And then what we often hear, from our clients after the fact, and from the ownership that hires us, is that you were able to get traction that we weren't able to get, and it's often
Mm.
because you ground yourself, in that approach as opposed to coming in with a hammer.
Mhm.
So how do you assess kind of a client's values, right? Like people may have values that are negative without even realizing they've kind of established those kind of values and culture at their firm, right? So how do you kind of, from the outside kind of assess and then help take them on the journey to kind of improve their company and get to better profitability? I always kind of figure out like how you kind of figure out who's the
Mhm.
right client to bring on board. Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's up
and
to
Becky,
you.
you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead. Honestly, Ken, you can just ask them. I mean, a lot of times I'll just ask them,
Yeah.
and I'll ask people that are coming on to our team as well, like, tell me what your top three values are, right? Just the same way you would
Yeah.
say, tell me what your top three growth goals are for this year. Tell me what your values are. How'd you get there? Why? Right? Why is that important to you? Because usually that's at the heart of why they started
Yeah.
the business, right? They might be clouded right now and thinking about, oh my gosh, I gotta grow, or oh my gosh, I'm getting an investment and we need to show this profitability or this EBITDA or whatever it might be. But taking them back a notch does two things, right? You get to understand them and the reason, the why behind what they're doing, which allows you to come up with solutions and
Yeah.
service them better. But two, it's also helping you vet them, right? And figure out, like, is this a match? Are we aligned on our goals together? Because it's one thing to say, yes, we can get you to a profitability goal. It's something completely different if we're not aligned on where we're truly going as we're moving forward.
Interesting. Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, no, that was really well put. I think a lot of that is understanding the why, and it's certainly the how. And I discussed, kind of the approach and the how, which I think is really important. Um, Truthfully, Jackie said, asking about values. Sometimes it's not even that explicit. It's having a conversation with someone, and just really kind of reading, how they react to things and how they think about things. If someone is very kind of straight and to the point and is kind of missing the forest, to focus on a few trees, it's probably not a good fit, right?
Yeah.
We can probably get them there, but the reality is we might not be the fastest, we might not have the deepest expertise. But what we're able to do is we're able to take a more cohesive, rounded, approach, and ultimately have better success in the end. So I think a lot of it is just, you get that through that personal interaction, right? And in a virtual world that can be challenging. But hop on the video screen, have the candid conversation, be able to tease that out early on. And you can usually feel it pretty early.
I
Yeah,
also
it's
think
funny because
another way, Ken, is like, something we do at Stealth is we'll share it. This is
Mhm.
how we work. These are our
Yeah,
values. This is what's important to us, right? And see how they react. Are they aligned? Do they have questions about it? Are they taken aback, right? So I think you can come to the table sharing your own. I even do that in interviews when I'm talking to people. Hey, these are mine. What are yours? Right? Are we
yeah.
aligned? At the start of the relationship.
Yeah, we do a lot of office leasing, and I feel like over the last 4 years, because of the pandemic, everything's kind of changed. Where it used to be just, hey, we need office space. Now it's like, we don't know. We're trying to figure out how we work, how we exist, how you create
Mm,
culture, ecosystem. And it's been fascinating sometimes to kind of see a bit of a misalignment where it's kind of like senior folks are like, we want everybody in here.
mhm.
Those are our kind of values and culture. And then other folks maybe aren't kind of seen eye to eye. So
Yeah.
we're not consultants like you both, but we kind of, consultants in a different way, I suppose. So it's fun sometimes, but also challenging to kind of match up and align
Yeah.
different kind of interest within an organization, which I'm sure you guys spend all day doing. So
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah,
you're bringing up such a good point because it's so funny. Yesterday, we just started talking about, or Monday, so I've lost track of my days ever since COVID, right? Nobody knows what day it is. But, we just started doing a values refresh for Stealth.
yeah,
We've changed since we last looked at it, right?
yeah,
But it's not about just what Jackie's values are. It's, hey, team, what do you think? What resonates with you, right? Because your point, Ken, you don't want to have that kind of
yeah,
rub between leadership and the team. Everybody's in it together, rowing the boat in the
mhm,
same direction. So getting that buy-in from your team and then having that input is super, super valuable to help guide us as leaders the
yeah,
direction of where we need to go.
yeah. Interesting, Chris. Yeah,
yeah, no, that's well put. And you touch on it, Ken. It's a different environment where it might be hybrid or somewhat remote, and a lot of that is generational too, and understanding what is really important to people, right?
mhm,
And so, I grew up in the culture when I started, my professional career where you're in the office 5 days a week. You're the first one in, you're the last to
yeah,
go. You don't leave before your boss leaves, right? Like these are like kind of the unwritten
yeah,
or the written rules that you had to follow. And now we're working in a different environment where often, more junior consultants that I hire, they have other commitments, they have other
yeah,
priorities in life, right? So if they have a standing commitment at 5 p.m., that's something that you have to respect and you have to figure out how to work around it.
yeah.
Some people have families, some people have other, community commitments. Find ways to work with them as opposed to trying to, force them into, the kind of the way that you were used to doing things.
Yeah, nailing that balance. And I think so much of kind of when we were kind of prepping for this, we talked a little bit about just kind of understanding and being sensitive to just emotions, vulnerability. I mean, how important is that kind of as a subset to kind of your high level values? Yeah,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
this is the one that I always get so passionate about, and
yeah,
Chris has heard me talk about for years, that as a woman, I think I've always, kind of heard this like, oh, if you come off and you're too assertive or you're too aggressive, you're considered something that starts with a B, or if you're not, and you're too relaxed, well, then you're not leadership material and you can't be emotional. And I've kind of taken the approach of intentional, heart centered leadership. Okay. Vulnerability
well,
is a power. I think one of the things Chris and I talked about that he helped me see is that vulnerability allows me to have my convictions in place, right? It allows me to bring things to the table where there's no questions, right? You know where I stand, you know what's important to me, and we can have open, honest conversations. And I think it's only through being vulnerable with each other that we can actually support each other. I don't want people on my team just yesing me. If you
Yeah.
disagree or you think you have a better way to do it, tell me. But that takes vulnerability. And
Mhm.
it is a learned skill. It is uncomfortable because of the way that a lot of us have been taught. And it is challenging for women because we'll be told, hey, you're emotional, hey, you're this, but I'll tell you what, like I've followed that for probably the last 15 years and it's gotten me to where I am.
Yeah.
And I would encourage others to do that. Men, women, doesn't
Mhm.
matter, but showing that emotional intelligence starts with you as a leader and making a safe space for others to come and share in the same way.
That's great.
I don't think I can follow that, Jackie. That's too good.
Oh, stop, Chris.
There's so many things that I could latch onto
Yeah,
there.
I mean, Chris, I think one of the things you taught me that you can talk a little bit about is like conviction over emotion and how we turn
Yeah.
that vulnerability into that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think absolutely, and I think when you talk about vulnerability too, it's being genuine.
Yeah.
And if you're a genuine leader and you're just truthfully a genuine person, that shows in spades. And if you're not, that also shows, right? And I
Yeah.
think having that vulnerability to be yourself and be real and allow people to see that goes a long way. I think we've all been in those situations where you're dealing with someone who kind of has a front or is cold, and you can't get through to them. Ultimately, right, you can't move things forward because you don't know where they stand, and sometimes people have hidden agendas and all these other things. By putting yourself out there, I think, and being vulnerable and having that genuine nature goes a long way. I think the other part of it, just to circle back on something that Jackie said a bit ago, which is really important, is you know people are going to have good days and bad days.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to put that on the table. Like Jackie said,
Yeah.
I think every time, when Jackie and I work together, the first minute or so of the conversation is literally just kind of blurting out where we're at, right? I'm
Yeah.
having a horrible, stressful day. Like it's so, or I feel great, right? And then kind of, okay, I understand what's going on in your world. Let's work
Hmm.
together on this, right?
Because
Hmm.
that helps with like fear and anxiety
Oh
and
yeah.
knee-jerk reactions, right? Like like we think sometimes about positive emotions, but there's also like the negative ones, right? Because like if you have a knee-jerk reaction because of something happening on your day, it's going to impact your colleagues, your clients, etc. Right? So
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to come from a bad finance meeting and bring that energy into, an interview with
yeah,
somebody who could be your next star employee. I mean, you don't want to do that, right? And how do you kind of, I think, grounding us back in those values, right? Taking that minute to say, okay, if genuine relationships and fun and success are important to me, how do I come from this meeting, which was high stress, into this meeting that should be fun and should be positive, and focus on that, right? And that's how I kind of use my values to go from, we're often wearing different hats, right, in leadership roles. That's how you can kind of glide through those different parts of your day. Otherwise, I think you'd kind of be swimming a bit in chaos.
Mm. So you mentioned, Jackie, kind of you'll do a check-in, right? So Chris, like, how often should companies that you're advised, like, how do you do a check-in? How often? Is it usually triggered by something? Does it just need to be organic? Like, how do you guys think about that kind of adjusting the ship, right? Like everybody's kind of a ship, sailing down the ocean, but you got to kind of toggle every once in a while, I imagine.
Yeah, I think it's a little of both, right? I think it's good to have kind of a regular cadence or rhythm to things, which just allows everyone to kind of stay on the same page and kind of understand where things are at. But as you mentioned, Ken, I think having those organic check-ins is even
Mhm.
more important, right?
Yeah.
So reaching out, not only reaching out when things are bad, reaching out when things are good, reaching out
Yeah.
with good news, right? I think
Mhm.
one of the things that we don't do enough is the praise and to lead with good news, something good is happening, right? We just
Yeah.
dive right into the problem as opposed to let's celebrate some of our successes and our wins. We're going to tackle the challenges. That's where we're going to put the most of our effort. But let's
Mhm.
take a second to celebrate the wins and let it be known. And that lifts people up and ultimately makes challenging and difficult situations that much easier to tackle.
So, and Jackie, I want to hear your thoughts, but just
Yeah.
real quick kind of reaction to that, right? Like my wife does this thing with our kids every night where it's like, what's your rose, your bud, your thorn? Kind of like start
Oh.
with a positive. What are you excited about? And then what kind of like maybe bothered you today? And it's been something that we even at work now, we're trying to in
Yeah.
our business development meetings and with my colleagues, just like, hey, okay, what's something good? What are we excited about? And okay, what's something we gotta kind of work on? And it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I never really put it
Yeah.
in this values-based kind of thought process, but I guess my wife's a lot smarter than I am, so she's
Well, thanks, Val. We're going to be
yeah,
stealing
exactly.
yours now and talking about roses moving forward.
Yeah.
I think for me too, taking a second to remember to check in on people is really important. Sometimes I'll have 5 minutes in my day in between meetings, and rather than going on to the next thing, I'll try to be intentional about just reaching out. Hey, how are you? Just stopping by to say hi, right? And one of my favorite phrases that I picked up during COVID, because I was binge watching a show called New Amsterdam, is how can I help? Right. And, as a leader, I think it's important. I think it's important to ask, how can I help? Usually no one takes me up on it. But when they do, that means it's important. And it gives me valuable insight into where my team really does need help, or where somebody might just need another boost that day, or some celebration. And if I can't fix it for them, I know that I can be that connector, that activator to get them that help that they need, which is something then we can all celebrate together at the end. And I think it's really important for leaders to come down. I've seen where they don't and they stay at the top, and it's like, ah, that's too much, or I'm not going to get in the weeds. And I'm not encouraging leaders to do that every single day and be in the weeds, but I do think that it's important to have those check ins and to
Sure.
show that you're willing to work as part of that team.
That's amazing. Yeah. The
Yeah,
accessibility,
no,
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
that's it. It's accessible. It's being present, right?
Yeah.
And office environment. It's an open door policy. It's checking in on people. It's genuinely being present and available. Makes a tremendous difference. And I often find myself with my clients. I become kind of a de facto therapist, right? They'll
Mhm.
reach out with their problems, personal and professional, right? Because they know that I lend an ear and I truly stop and think and process it, right?
Mhm.
I'm not there just to kind of, impart my way. It's really to, help them with whatever it is they
Mhm.
need help with.
Mhm.
So as you build this kind of muscle memory and check-ins on values and staying true to it, how helpful is that in turning kind of challenges and problems and opportunities, right? Like how does that kind of help an organization, leaders kind of rebound faster potentially? Or does it?
Oh, yeah, I think it absolutely does. I think if we think about situations that we've all been in, whether we're dealing with a difficult client, whether we're dealing with a personnel issue, whether we're dealing with maybe a mistake, right, that was made, I think pausing, right, not having that knee jerk reaction comes from being able to really ground yourself in your values. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why are we as an organization doing what we're doing? And then figuring out, how do I want to move forward with this? I think it's really a grounding place to make an educated decision that's data-based, of course, but also aligned to your values, because there might be decisions where you have a difficult client, that is impacting your team,
Yeah.
right? It's impacting morale, and you look at that and you look at profitability and revenue and you say, hey, um, this actually isn't worth the price of what it's doing to our team and our culture, because it's not aligned with our values, right? Let's spend this energy growing, right? And use it as an opportunity to move forward, rather than having that knee jerk reaction of, oh my gosh, we messed something up, right? Like it's really about grounding and picking apart, dissecting that situation and coming up with a plan that's going to be have alignment, right, around the ship, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Instead of it just being like, why did she do that? Like, that doesn't make
Mm.
sense. Decisions that come from values that are aligned with others are always going to make sense.
Interesting.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's really well put, Jackie. And I mean, we talked about it too. Often these knee-jerk reactions, right? They might seem right in the moment, but they're often not what's best long term. They often have undue consequences, whether it's additional pressure or stress on the team, whether it's a poor financial decision because it didn't have the long term in mind. A lot of the things that I'm grounded in the way that I do my process improvement work, as I mentioned, I'm an improver, are lean methodologies, right? And that grew out of Toyota in the 80s, and it's been implemented in various industries and in various facets. And one of the things I always keep in mind is, there's something called, like the 7 types of muda, which is waste. And one of those is rework. And I hate rework. I hate rework in everything I do. When we're knee-jerk, when we try to go too fast, we're gonna have to go back. We're gonna have to do it. Things are gonna be missed. There's gonna be mistakes. And people that have the short time horizon on mind don't often see that, as opposed to, as Jackie has mentioned, take that pause, take that minute, make sure that there's alignment and it's grounded in something. When we have that consensus and we have those head nods, we end up getting there faster in the end, though it may seem that we're going slower in the present.
Yeah, it's a concept, slow down to speed up, right? And it's that slow down, what you're saying, Chris, where we can ground ourselves in those values, get the alignment, and then take off.
Yeah, it's amazing. So look, as we wind down, I kind of want to, chat a little bit about culture and this new world we live in. So many organizations are kind of spread across the country or virtual, right? Like, how do you kind of instill strong values and culture when you're a leader of an organization that's either massive and global or even small and remote? Like, is it harder? Is it easier? How do you guys approach it? Yeah, Jackie, maybe, and then.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think, Ken, it's a lot of what we've already talked about today. I think it comes down to aligning on those values, make sure that they're supporting your goals as an organization, using those as a technique to hire the best people for the right roles, and bringing them along as your tribe, right? Getting their buy-in to ensure that that consensus is there. And then it's a very grassroots effort, right? If you have that core group of people that are aligned there, you can build that and they'll help you build that. They'll help you carry that torch forward. And I don't think it matters if you're virtual or if you're in person. It's really about having that group of people that are aligned with your mission and values moving forward. Chris and I are a testament to that, of like us having this, working partnership for years after, hanging out for a few years together to do something, right? And so it's about building that tribe that you can move forward with. And I think values is one way for us to kind of suss out who is the right person to join that team and is it going to be a good fit? Because I always say that a resume is great. Resume gets you in a door, right? But it's the values and the work ethic and the personality of the person, that attitude, that is really what I'm looking for. It's who you are as a person. We can train the rest.
Yeah, interesting. Chris?
Yeah, no, that's really well put. I mean, one thing I guess I would say, and maybe it's disagreeing a little bit with Jackie, is that, it is more difficult and you have to put some work into it when it's virtual, right? But I completely agree with Jackie is that, you establish that up front, and you don't waver from it. Values, culture, commitment, those types of things, they never die because they're steadfast. They might go into remission, right? If you lose, if you're not consistently reinforcing it. But it's really easy to add water on it and just bring it right back, right? So I think that's the most important thing, is that you just have to be conscious and deliberate about it. And it's one of those things that just doesn't change.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. It does take a little bit more, to your point, to do it, but I think it's about that intentionality, right? And setting that up front and just sticking to it. Like you said, you don't want to rush through hiring, right? You want to get that best person, even if it takes you a few weeks longer.
Yeah, it's funny because just listening to you guys talk about this, right? Like, I'm a very big in-person guy. I'm in the office, and we usually create teams around projects. And over the last year, I've been working on a kind of certain, sector of the business is a little different. And the team we put together is all virtual. And it's amazing how we've built this kind of project and team and service offering. And we're in San Francisco, Boston, New York, and DC versus colleagues I see in the office. And it's been great, but I'm like, actually, those are my people, even though they're not here physically. So even somebody like me, who's a total neurotic person and needs to see people all the time, even I can do it. So yeah, you're right. You just need to be intentional with it.
Yeah.
Because those moments of just kind of at the water cooler or over a cup of coffee, those are things that I was always so worried about losing. But there are ways if you kind of
I mean, look at us today. We're having coffee, right, Ken? So there we are. I guess I got a question for you, Ken.
This is
how are you, I'm sure after all of these conversations that we've had, right, where are you at with your values? What comes to mind that's most important for you?
So it's so funny because we've done over 150 of these, and I kind of feel like Chris alluded to it, like sometimes your desire in these meetings is to kind of like tell people what you think and get your idea across. And this has been such a muscle memory exercise for me as like, I'm just here to listen. I'm here to ask questions. And it's something that now in every meeting and every pitch I have, it's less me saying, hey, this is what I think you should do for your real estate strategy. It is literally, I'm just having coffee with Ken, with all my clients, all my prospects, and just asking questions. And it's been one of these fascinating things from a life balance perspective. It's just more enjoyable. It's like a thought lead, like you're learning from people, and then you're finding ways to connect the dots and actually service and help them. And I have 3 kids at home, and I maintain a decent work-life balance, and I can drop them off and pick them up and still do this. And this kind of, you guys have hit the nail on the head on so many things where it's like, I drink too much coffee and I go too fast. So I've had to really learn to like slow down to go fast later. So all these things that I kind of think were things I never noticed about myself, these talks have kind of helped me maybe correct them or modify them in a way that I think makes me a better service provider, family man, leader, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it also, maybe this resonates with you as well, but I think having made so many decisions from a values place, whether professionally or personally, it brings me joy. It brings me happiness, right? It allows me to look back on situations, good or difficult, and say, I couldn't have done it any differently better, right? It helps you prevent that kind of second guessing of yourself, especially in difficult situations, because at the end, some of the tactical things maybe could have been changed, but the core values behind the decisions and the actions that you took were aligned with who you are and your values. And so I think you're able to move forward through things a lot easier and with some joy and happiness.
And we talked about this in one of our prep calls, right? Like even the idea now that I'm a little calmer and more patient and selective about companies and projects I work on has also been kind of a modification. It's like, and really like you're always, hustle, 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 get more clients, get more business. Now it's kind of like pause. Who's this client? What do they do? Can I actually offer value to help them? Because at the end of the day, honestly, you build this momentum if you actually feel like you're helping people, to be honest, right? Like, you're just doing a deal. It's like, okay, that's great. But like, if you're actually making an impact, you actually kind of build those kind of moments of momentum, if you will. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's as simple as I call it the getting out of bed test, right? Like, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Are you dreading the day and you just hit the snooze button, or you're energized, you're excited, you're ready to get after it, right? And I think Jackie hit a lot of those things, right? When you have these relationships and these professional activities that are rooted in your values, you're excited, you're energized, you're ready to get out there with your tribe, with your team, and to go make a difference.
Yeah, and I think it also allows you to sleep better.
Stressing you out. It's like,
you sleep better at night, right? If you know that you're aligned to your values, you're treating people the way you would want to be treated, you're doing what you should be doing for your partners, you can sleep well at night, right? And then you can wake up, like Chris said, and be energized. So
that glass of wine at the end of the night, toasting a great day versus like drinking it because you're stressed is a big difference. So.
Yeah, those are 2 different things. And we follow it up with some, Nespresso and coffee in the morning.
Exactly. Well, guys, I'm so grateful to both of you for joining. It's obviously, Jackie, we go way back. Chris, such a pleasure to connect with you. And I think it's such an important topic, and we just scratched the surface. But values-based leadership is something that you really have to be intentional and thoughtful on. So I'm grateful to both of you for being here, and appreciate everyone tuning in. You can always catch up on this episode, future episodes, past episodes on coffeewithken.com. It is August 7th. We are taking the rest of August off, so we'll see you kind of after Labor Day, and we'll have a busy fall. So stay tuned. Good to see you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.